With NBA free agency just around the corner, there's a lot of rumors and rumblings going on around the league as far as who's going to get traded, who's testing free agency, and who's going to re-sign with their team. And the Dallas Mavericks have a big decision to make. Do we add another star to pair with Luka and Kyrie to help push this team to really go for a championship next year? Or do we trust the roster long term and just make small changes to the lineup or get someone to come off the bench? But one name that's just been tossed around by the Mavs fans over the last few weeks has been Paul George, as someone that fans feel like could really help this team just elevate to the next level and go and get the championship. And in this video, we're going to break that down on the type of player Paul George is, what he brings to the Dallas Mavericks, and if we even have the money and the assets to try and get Paul George. But how's it going, everybody? My name is Marcel Martin. This is Mavs Digest, bringing you everything Mavericks related. And before we get started with today's video, you guys have been doing just a great job of just hitting that notification bell. 8.6% of you guys have that notification bell ring. But it's the off season, but it's not my off season. I'm bringing you guys videos every single day, maybe even twice a day, on everything Mavericks related. And if you want to be up to date on all the latest news and everything Mavericks related, make sure you hit that bell so you don't miss out on a single thing that we do. But like I said in the intro, we are talking about Paul George. He's a player who's entering the last year of his contract. He is going into this upcoming season with a player option, but he doesn't have an extension yet with the Clippers. And Paul George by no means is a bad player. I know the memes of pandemic P, way off P, sometimes called playoff P, and I think it was the bubble year where he really just fell apart and was just a no-show in that entire playoff run. But the truth is, Paul George is actually a very good player. He's very consistent and arguably one of the most consistent, if not the best player on the Clippers team, where you got Kawhi Leonard, who's always hurt. You got Russell Westbrook coming off the bench, who just goes on the court and just does whatever he wants. And then you got James Harden, who only really shows up every now and then when he feels like it. And Paul George still doesn't have an extension with the Clippers. They got Kawhi Leonard locked in on long term. They got James Harden. They got Russell Westbrook, a couple other guys as well. But Paul George, being arguably their best player, who doesn't have an extension, might want to do a little sign and trade where he does pick up his player option with the Clippers and then get traded elsewhere. And a lot of fans have been calling for Paul George, and I'll throw up his stats real quick. For the season, Paul George put up 22 points a game, 5.2 rebounds, 3.5 assists, half a block, 1.5 steals, 2.1 turnovers, 2.7 fouls, but he is shooting 47% from the field and 41% from three. He's 6'8". He is 34 years old, so he is 2 years older than Kyrie. He shoots 45% on corner threes, 73% of all his threes are assisted, and 47% of all shots are threes. And that's not too bad. Like, I like those stats, even if it's a starter, or even better, someone coming off the bench. I don't think Paul George would ever come off the bench for us. If we did get him, he would definitely be a starter. But someone that can get you 22 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, but also half a block and 1.5 steals. Paul George is no slouch on defense. He does definitely try his best. Not going to say Paul George is one of the best defenders in the league, but he definitely does add something to your defense, which the Dallas Mavericks already have a pretty good defense. But that offense is something that we've been saying time and time again that we definitely need to improve. We saw it kind of fall apart in the playoffs. And for someone to shoot 47% from the floor, 41% from three, 45% on corner threes. And one thing that I want to point out to you is only 73% of his threes are assisted. That does sound obviously high. It's above 50%. So you think that he does a lot of catch and shoot, but arguably he can create his own shot off the dribble. He can get the ball, go in an isolation situation, and knock down threes, like we saw in the playoffs against us, where he was just hitting crazy shot after shot that was highly contested. In all seriousness, someone with the skill set of Paul George would be excellent for this Dallas Mavericks team. It would definitely propel us into that championship contending conversation where even the national media couldn't ignore us. But the truth of the matter is, Paul George is 34 years old. He is older. If he was to pick up his player option with the Clippers, get traded to us, do we sign him to another 3 years? That would put him up till he's 37. Does his skill set and his overall play still last for that long? And that's a gamble that Nico Harrison would probably have to take into consideration if we were to try and just entertain a potential trade for Paul George. And I did a little poll just the other day on the channel, and I asked you guys, does Paul George help the Dallas Mavericks win a championship? About 2,000 people voted, and 59% said yes, the dynasty begins, while 41% said no, it would mess up the roster, ruin the fit. Not necessarily split on that between the two, but more favored getting Paul George, where even I voted no, it would mess up the roster and ruin the fit. And in my personal opinion, I don't think Paul George would really help us. I mean, his contract, if he does pick up his player option, is pretty big, and I don't think we can facilitate a $45 or $48 million trade, which I did try to cook up. We'll talk about that later in this video, and I don't think fans would like that trade at all. But the truth of the matter is we cannot afford to get that big of a contract. And when you look at teams that are trying to assemble super teams, I mean, the Boston Celtics, they did it the right way. But look at the Phoenix Suns. You have Bradley Beal, you have Devin Booker, and you have Kevin Durant that you have to pay $150 million between the three of them next year. You don't have any trade assets. You don't have any key role players on your team, and you just lost in the first round. Meanwhile, the Dallas Mavericks, who have a lot of good role players, we have good stars, we did make the finals. And if we want to look at the Milwaukee Bucks, they got Dame Lillard, and I understand Giannis was hurt. There's a lot of nuance behind that. But the thing is, if you try to build a super team in this current age of the NBA, it's just not going to work out for you because it hasn't worked since Kevin Durant joined the Golden State Warriors. You can argue the Boston Celtics are a super team. I understand that. But like I said, they did things the right way. They already had Tatum and Brown. They just added Derrick White. They had Drew Holiday, who was getting traded around, and then they got Kristaps Porzingis from the Washington Wizards. So yes, super team, I get it. But the Dallas Mavericks, if we want to create our own super team, I don't think Paul George is the answer. But I'm not the only one that also felt that way. A few comments from that post right here. Richard Case saying no, over 30, overrated, overpaid, injury ridden, washed up has-beens, and nobody under 6'8" or over 28, they cannot help if they are old and broken, like layup line Maxey. Richard Case always coming with the hot takes, and he's like, yeah, I don't think we need somebody who's getting that old, who's going to want that much money. It's just not going to work. And more comments on the whole Paul George to the Dallas Mavericks thing. Someone else saying, play-wise, he'd be perfect, but how are you going to build a dynasty with him at this age? We lose a lot of depth for at most a few years of decent play out of him. And I agree. Play-wise, yes, someone of that skill set could definitely help the Dallas Mavericks, just not someone who's 34, not someone who's going to want a whole lot of money, especially in a trade situation where we just give up way too much for only at max maybe 2 to 3 years of quality service, quality play. But does that guarantee a championship? I'm just not sold on that. And another comment saying PG, no. He's 50% playoff P and 50% pandemic P. I think that's fair. Like I said earlier, I think he is the better player on the Clippers, the most consistent player on the Clippers, arguably their best player at times. However, he does still have his moments where he does disappear. We saw it in the playoffs where we put Derrick Jones Jr., who just locked him up for the majority of that series and just made him a non-factor entirely. And I also don't think that a trade between the Dallas Mavericks and the Clippers would ever go down. Why would the Clippers trade one of their best players to a team that just knocked them out in the playoffs? I mean, that's them doing us a favor. I don't think that would happen. But if we try to put on our GM hats, our GM jackets, and try to actually make a trade happen with the Los Angeles Clippers for Paul George, it would probably look like something like this. And arguably, this is not the best trade. If you think you can make a better trade for Paul George, please let me know in the comment section down below. But to get Paul George, whatever picks need to be involved, you throw in those picks, which I don't think we have. But the Clippers, we would probably have to send them Tim Hardaway Jr. It's an expiring contract. It opens up cap space, which will be the case for any team that we trade Tim Hardaway to. You're not getting Tim because you want him. You're getting him because he has an expiring contract. We'd probably have to throw in PJ Washington, and I really don't want to throw in PJ Washington, but that's what you'd probably have to do. And you throw in Josh Green because he is a younger guy who is serviceable, but that's the only way to make the salaries match. It's $48 million. We can't just free that up without giving up a lot of salary, unless you want to trade Kyrie Irving to the Clippers, which I don't want to do, not for Paul George. And Luka Doncic, he's untouchable. Same with Derrick Lively. We have a few untouchable players, but this is what a trade would potentially look to just get the conversation started. And I checked, the Clippers don't even have a first-round pick till 2030. They have the next 6 years without a first-round draft pick. You know for sure, if you're trading for Paul George, you're sending them a lot of first-round draft picks, because if Paul George gets traded, they're going to look at Russell Westbrook, they're looking at James Harden and a couple other guys as well on if they want to stay competitive or maybe they want to just go through a rebuild. But that's all I got for you guys today. What do you guys think about Paul George? Do you think that he's a player that could actually help the Dallas Mavericks? Do you think it's even realistic that we could get Paul George? But really quick, the last thing that I wanted to show you guys, the reason why we're talking about Paul George is this report right here. We saw over the playoffs, Paul George and Joel Embiid all buddy on camera, you know, kind of hinting at the Sixers were a team that wanted to get Paul George. Well, this report came out saying the Sixers are bowing out of the Paul George sweepstakes before free agency begins, per Shams, saying if Philadelphia is this confident in another plan, they must have assurance elsewhere. Stay tuned. So, yeah, so that right there kind of shows you that if the Philadelphia 76ers are backing out of the Paul George sweepstakes, Where does he go? Does he stay with the Clippers? That's kind of what I'm thinking. He'll just pick up his player option. He'll probably get an extension after the offseason, probably halfway through the season. But do you think that we could potentially get Paul George? Do you think it's a good fit? Let me know down in the comment section down below. But like I said earlier, thank you for making this far to the video. Check out our Twitter and Discord links in the description below. We are doing another channel giveaway where we're going to give out some Dallas merch. The winner will be announced the first week of July, and the only way to enter our giveaway is to become a channel member. But until next time, y'all take care. Drink water. Peace.